and dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. We're going to kind of just get into all the turmoil today with China, Greece, the euro, Russia, and our own economy, stock market, and we'll just kind of get into the whole turmoil that seems to be going on worldwide right now. And I think it's all structured and organized for a certain purpose, but in a way it also acts in its own. You can manipulate things that, well, you know, I know if I dig a ditch off of the stream and make it deeper, the water is going to tend to flow that direction. It's one of those things that we have people that are manipulating. We know that Soros, he was involved in manipulating the whole Ferguson riots, putting a lot of money behind that. And there were also reports that came out that he was heavily involved in the Ukrainian uprising. And now it also looks like Russia is going to throw the NGO Soros Foundation out of Russia. Maybe they are realizing how manipulative this person is and how much he finances revolutions that are basically just tools that he's using to get what he wants. But we'll kind of dive into a little bit of all this. I do want to start off with Greece, though. And I have a video here that was put out 2 days ago by AMTV. And for those that maybe haven't followed the whole Greece thing, they did vote 61% no to the Eurozone austerity. See, what's happened with Greece is, well, Greece bailed out the banks. Therefore, instead of the bank having debt because of bad decisions that they made, now the people of Greece are supposed to take up that debt because some politicians and groups decided to bail them out. Well, this, you know, we already see this problem with people we supposedly vote for, doing basically the same type of crap. And the worst thing about Greece's situation is we're talking about the Eurozone. We're talking about the EU, where they really have absolutely no say in what happens with the euro, how their money's been manipulated, and how basically this system is rigged. But we also see this here in America because we have the illusion of democracy doesn't mean that we actually have a voice, because absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that's what's been created in our government. But let me play this clip here from AMTV. Greece collapse, 61% vote no to Eurozone austerity. And then I'm going to read something. I might even play the clip. But it's Farage over in EU Parliament basically telling Greece to leave the euro. But let me go ahead and play this clip here from AMTV.
I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV Alternative Media Television. It's Monday, July 6, 2015. One day after the July 5th Greek referendum, of which the people of Greece voted an overwhelming no, with 61% counted, tallied, voting no against the Eurozone, against the European Union, the EU, the Troika, the whore that makes up Angela Merkel, who virtually took it up the ass over the weekend. A big FU to this experiment that makes up the euro and this integration of member states that are now collapsing courtesy of the Troika, that rank a big, fat, freaking F on this experiment. A total and utter disaster, a catastrophe. I mean, if these people ran businesses, they would be fired immediately. But not whores like Angela Merkel, not people at the Federal Reserve like Janet Yellen or Ben Helicopter Bernanke. No, we keep these people in power to print more money, to organize and orchestrate further bailouts, to promote even more integration, even though their experiments continue to fail. Not a single mainstream pundit got this right. Not a single pundit on CNBC, MSNBC, any of the mainstream media got this right. Remember, even going into the weekend, it was that there was going to be a yes vote. That's what all the polls said. That's what all the pundits said. That the people of Greece would be so fearful and traumatized by the fear-mongering coming out of the European Union and the EU that they would vote yes to austerity. Even though, as I've been saying for years now, the Greek people have nothing to lose. I mean, if you're living on, let's say, 15 or 20 euros a day, who cares if there's a limit at the ATM on withdrawals of $50 to $60 euros a day? Who really gives a shit? If you've already lost everything, if you've already lost your shirt, why in God's green earth would you vote for more austerity when it really doesn't matter? When you've already been suffering a depression-like scenario in Greece for 5 years. There's not enough food. Suicides are up. Unemployment and youth unemployment above 25%. I mean, the people of Greece literally have nothing to lose. So bravo to Tsipras. Bravo to Varoufakis, who just left. I like to play with his name a little bit, to play on words. Varoufakis, who just left. Bravo! Kind of an interesting departure that he would leave upon the successful no vote of which he promoted. I actually think that's a tactic. I think that the leadership of Greece is far more intelligent. They've been far more proactive and successful than the EU wants you to believe. I mean, they just set a precedent for the entire destruction of the Eurozone. They are a giant and gave a giant black eye to the whore that makes up Mario Draghi, and Angela Merkel, and Christine Lagarde over at the IMF, who now have lost literally all sense of credibility. There is no credibility at the EU anymore. There is no credibility at the IMF. These same people told us several weeks ago that if Greece failed, which they have, they've defaulted, although they use the word arrears, so they don't have to use the ugly D word default, which means, basically they're declaring bankruptcy. They said if Greece failed, this is what they said, the entire Eurozone had failed. So essentially, based on their own language, their own linguistics, and what they've been telling us, not only has Greece failed, the entire Eurozone has failed. And that is the big picture no one's paying attention to. The entire Eurozone experiment is finished. It's been entirely destructive. It has sent countries into poverty. It has kicked the can down the road indefinitely, whether or not it's Greece or it's Spain, its nearest neighbor with close to 25% unemployment, or it's Italy or any other of the pigs nations. Again, Greece, no different than the United States of America and the Federal Reserve printing at the printing presses, never addressing our debt problem. Interesting, as we had the July 4th holiday watching fireworks, I couldn't help but think, how is it we already screwed things up in America after a short 239 years? I mean, the radical leftists that make up our bullshit politically correct society wouldn't even like our founding fathers today. They'd probably have the founding fathers in jail, Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson. They probably would have outcasted these guys and engineered a witch hunt and tied rocks around them to see if they floated. I mean, that's how radical America is. This bullshit politically correct society, LGBTQ, queer and questioning community that we've created for ourselves. This Obama land, which has intentionally been engineered to socialize the United States of America. I mean, this is exactly what the agenda was. Obama, largely successful. It's why certain people, namely Donald Trump, have been gaining in popularity, even among the Republican Party in recent days, while he's making a giant splash along with his hairpiece on this narrative that makes up the 2016 presidential election. Because he's politically incorrect, people like that. He's arrogant, some people like that. He's for profit, a lot of Americans like that. Again, we're supposed to have capitalism here. And more importantly, and most importantly, he is championing America. He is championing American values, our system, the United States. He loves our country, and so he's championing it. And that is the greatest thing that, honestly, most Americans are just kind of unfamiliar with. Obama hasn't been championing anything here in the United States of America. He has been destroying, fundamentally, our core values. You know what's coming next after now they've radicalized this LGBTQ community, which, by the way, makes up 4 to 5% or less of the entire U.S. population? What they're coming for next is under God. Yeah, you bet your ass they are. They're coming after under God. You know, even though the country was founded under God, I mean, it even says on our freaking currency, this is built into the Constitution itself. That's what they're coming for next. These radical, leftist, atheist, lesbian, bisexual, gay, queer, and questioning radicals. You know, Andrew Breitbart had it right when he called these leftists radicals, the radical left, when he called Obama a radical, because these are the radicals. These are the people committing treason against the United States of America. Again, how have we effed everything up in this country in just a short 239 years? I mean, we've done a little bit better than the EU. What are they, like 15, 16 years since 2001, and that's already being destroyed? But our country, 239 years. It's our political correctness that is destroying us. It is this radical nature of these socialist leftists that make up Obama and his peons that are ruining this nation. And it's why people like Donald Trump are resounding with the American people. They're building more support because everybody knows the Trump name. I mean, look at the candidacy among the Republican Party. Everybody knows Trump around the world. You ask somebody in China if they know Trump, they know Trump. If you ask someone in Japan, if they know Trump, they know Trump. If you ask someone in Russia, if they know Trump, they know Trump. If you ask someone in Afghanistan, they know who freaking Donald Trump is, but they don't know who Rand Paul is. Some of them have probably heard of Bush, but they certainly don't know of Rand Paul. You know, I think it's why Trump is making such a big splash. And he's being taken totally out of context. I mean, he makes a comment about all these illegal immigrants coming and crossing over our border, saying that some of them are rapists. And CNN says it's like he lambasted the entire Mexican population or something and called everybody a rapist and everybody a murderer. He didn't do anything like that. He just said that some of these people are rapists coming across our border, are killers, are murderers, sucking on the teat of this socialized state that makes up the Obama regime now. Something he is 100% correct about. And it's why Americans are responding. It's why there is this fervor. It's why he's even pissing off the GOP establishment, because he is a serious, let me repeat this, serious threat to the Republican Party this coming election. He has real chances of winning in 2016. He is far more popular than his counterparts that make up Rand Paul, or even the tertiary Bush, who, by the way, I think they say is married to a wife who's of Mexican descent or something like that. They're trying to, play that into his pitch. The third Bush, the oligarchy that makes up the Clintons and the Bushes into infinity. So again, every single mainstream pundit gets it wrong, except for here on AMTV, who's been telling you for over 5 years now Greece would collapse. Greece would eventually leave the Eurozone, whether or not it was today or tomorrow. They would assuredly default on their debt. I said this last week. I wasn't convinced that the Greek people were going to vote yes. I said it was likely they would vote no, which no mainstream media pundit was talking of or speaking to, which is exactly what they did. Not on a razor-edge margin, by an overwhelming majority, 61%, voting in favor of giving a big, fat middle finger to the Eurozone, the EU, the Troika, Angela Merkel, Mario Drag Queen, and the bondage and chains that they've been a part of for several years now, living in a Great Depression-esque environment for over 5 years now, without hope, living in poverty, living under tyranny. You know, if Americans want a glimpse of what our future looks like, just take a look at Greece, because it's exactly what this freaking scumbag of a president is promoting here in the United States. Socialization of the United States of America, this politically correct bullshit LGBTQ society, which is destroying us like a stage 4, or maybe they even have stage 5 cancer from within. I mean, again, these radicals wouldn't even like the founding fathers if they were alive today, would probably kill our founding fathers. Those radicals, the peaceful socialists, as they like to call themselves, those people, those radicals, those people committing treason against the United States Constitution and the founding principles that have made America great for so long. And I'm telling you, folks, they're coming after under God next. They want to get rid of that. These atheistic assholes, not that every atheist is an asshole, but this politically correct atheistic faction that makes up the peons that follow Obama, out to set and destroy this country. Again, I'll hear them say things like, well, things need to change. The Constitution is outdated. It's an archaic document. It's a living testament that should be changed and transformed. Well, if you believe that, radical leftist asshole, you're committing treason. And so is the President of the United States. Because it's pretty clear. Just read the freaking Constitution. Just study the founding of this great nation. Study the founding principles of America. Nowhere does it say, let's just destroy those founding principles, which is exactly what's happening in America today. Donald Trump, 2016, a serious contender, championing America, our Constitution, our principles. Again, a real...
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. AMTV, Alternative Media TV, Christopher Green. You can find him AMTV on YouTube. Now, I disagree that Donald Trump is a champion of the but I do believe that he does have that notability that people tend to like him even when they dislike him. So yeah, he's a threat to the GOP, but I just I still kind of look at him as a president as a joke, but you never know. But I'm not one for voting for a master. Therefore, I think most any way you go with any of these candidates, you're voting for a master. Again, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now, with this whole Greece thing, Christopher Green was right to kind of connect it with what is happening here in America. But we'll kind of go back to the Greece thing for a minute. Farage rocks EU Parliament tells Cyprus to leave the euro, reclaim your democracy. You can find this at Infowars.com. UK UKIP leader Nigel Farage gave a rousing speech in front of the European Parliament in Strasbourg today, during which he directly told Greece Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras to lead the Greek people out of the Eurozone and reclaim the country's democracy. And I'm going to play this short clip here.
And now Mr. Farage for the FD Group.
Thank you. What we're seeing in this chamber this morning, and indeed across the whole of Europe, is an irreconcilable cultural difference between Greece and Germany, a split between the north and the south of Europe. The European project is actually beginning to die. Nobody in this room will recognise that, but actually the peoples of Europe are saying we were never asked whether we wanted this. This has been foisted upon us. And we need to understand why EMU doesn't work. Those monsters, Kohl and Mitterrand, backed up with a clever but dangerous Delors, believed that if they put in place an economic and monetary union, then as night follows day, there would be political union, that there would be an acceptance of this project, that the north and south of Europe would converge, that we'd all start to love each other, that we'd all begin to feel a European identity, that we'd all begin to show allegiance to the flag and the anthem. Those of us, of course, that criticised this were told that we were extremists and we lacked vision. Well, one vision we didn't lack is we understood that the countries of Europe are different, and that if you try and force together different people or different economies without first seeking the consent of those people, it is unlikely to work. And the plan has failed. This isn't just Greece we're talking about today. The whole of the Mediterranean now finds itself in the wrong currency. And yet virtually nobody in the political arena has got the courage to stand up and say that. Indeed, I feel that the continent is now divided from north to south. There is a new Berlin Wall, and it's called the euro. And the old enmities have been resumed. Just listen to the way that the German leader of the Christian Democrat group this morning attacked Mr. Spiras. I think it was absolutely disgusting, but it shows the way north and south now feel about each other. Mr. Tsipras, your country should never have joined the euro. I think you acknowledge that, but the big banks, the big businesses and big politics forced you in. Goldman Sachs, the German arms manufacturers, they were all very happy. And when the bailouts began, they weren't for the Greek people. Those bailouts were to bail out French, German and Italian banks. They haven't helped you at all. And these years of austerity, these years of high unemployment, of increasing poverty, none of it's worked. In fact, your debt GDP ratio has gone from 100% at the start of the crisis to 180% right now. It would be madness, sir, to continue on this course. You have been very brave. You called that referendum. When one of your predecessors tried to do the same, the bully boys of Brussels had him removed. They tried their best again. Mr. Juncker said you would have to leave the euro and leave the European Union. Even Mr. Schulz, the President of the Parliament, who one would have thought might be neutral, said that if the Greeks voted no, their power supplies may even go down. There were threats and bullying, but the Greeks stood firm. But, sir, You cannot have your cake and eat it. They will give you no more, these people. They can't afford to. If they give you more, they'll have to give other Eurozone members more. So your moment has come. And frankly, if you've got the courage, you should lead the Greek people out of the Eurozone with your head held high. Get back your democracy. Get back control of your country. Give your people the leadership and the hope that they crave. Yes, it'll be tough for the first few months, but with a devalued currency and with friends of Greece all over the world, you will recover.
Now, I think that was about the best speech that could possibly be given, and that's exactly what Greece needs to do. That's what countries need to do, is stop centralizing things. If Greece went back to being Greece, and then gave its little state-like areas power over those areas where they can make their own decision and, you know, make their own laws and rules, kind of like if we went back to state rights and then went back to, you know, your local county. If we started to decentralize, you'd have more power to be your individual self in your local community. When it starts getting to self-responsibility instead of, well, I don't have to worry about it because that's what the government does. That's why we are where we are. That's why other countries are where they are. When you don't research anything, when you just watch the news or take the talking points from government, when you don't question the professors or the scientists that were paid by a corporation to test the corporation stuff, and you just go, oh yeah, they said it was safe. It's when people question things that you start to learn truth. So why would you put your responsibility with other people? Well, they're experts in that field. What makes them experts? Well, they studied it. Or, you know, is there a possibility that you could study? Because I know plenty of people that have been through many, many years of college, and they have the concept, but they went so many years of college because of whatever reason, whether, you know, some of them because those classes take that long, they still will admit that, you know, I understand the concept or the theory or the basics of this, but I don't know it enough to just trust myself. That's why I've always urged for more, you know, be an apprentice. I think that should, in any field, the apprenticeship should be started in early years of high school. And I think in every field, apprenticeship is extremely important. But we don't see that in society anymore because we trust someone in a college. And we see a lot of these colleges and a lot of these fields really be pushing more of an agenda rather than education and critical thinking, because it's not about critical thinking, it's about being politically correct and, you know, following the agenda that one person might put out there. And I know a lot of people that have been to college that really look at it as a joke. A lot of people have been through college and can't get a job in their field and realize, well, this was kind of worthless if I'm working at, one of these big chain stores as a stalker and can't find a job to pay off this big loan that I took out. Okay. We're going to move on here a little bit. Now, China, the U.S., we're seeing some stock moves, and I think a lot of this does in a way relate to Greece, but more even into China. Excuse me. I have one here from Truth and Media, formerly benswan.com. It's truthandmedia.com. As stocks plunge, China enacts 6-month ban on stock sales by major shareholders. Says as stock exchanges plunge in a panic that has been likened to the 1929 U.S. stock market crash that set off the Great Depression, Bloomberg is reporting that China's Securities Regulatory Commission has enacted a 6-month ban on sales of shares by investors who had over a 5% stake in a listed company. Under the new policy, executives and directors of listed companies are also banned from selling their shares during the next 6 months. Quote, there is a mood of panic in the market and a large increase in the irrational dumping of shares, causing a strain of liquidity, unquote, read a Wednesday statement on the new policy by Securities Regulatory Commission. Deltic Assets Management LLC money manager Gregory Lesko told Bloomberg the policy may have a small impact in the short term, but like all market manipulation, there will be a price to be paid later. Brian Jacobson, chief portfolio strategist at Wells Fargo Funds Management, said the extent to which they can apply this ban to foreign ownership interests remains to be seen. According to the Financial Times, the Securities Regulatory Commission has stated that it will deal sternly with investors who violate the ban. Meanwhile, the government-run China Scrutiny Finance Corporation has been purchasing stocks directly using funds injected into the market by the People's Bank of China in an effort to artificially prop up stock prices. Also, some Chinese stock exchanges are allowing particular companies to freeze sales of their shares. Bloomberg estimates that at least 1,331 companies have stopped trading so far. And I think this, on top of what's happening in Greece, is playing a big part in what we started seeing. Now, I have one here from antimedia.org. Did Anonymous just take down the New York Stock Exchange? And for many of you, you understand that the stock exchange had technical difficulties today. A lot of people claim it was anonymous. I tend to not believe that too much. But shortly before midnight on Tuesday, Anonymous wished bad luck to befall Wall Street When the New York Stock Exchange experienced technical issues slightly less than 12 hours later, Anonymous appeared to have received its wish. Trading abruptly halted at 11:32 a.m. on Wednesday morning due to some technical malfunctions, explained NYSE Director to Floor Operations Art Cashin. While U.S. officials claim there were no signs of cyber breach that would have caused the difficulties, the timing of the anonymous message is interesting. Tweeted under the handle at YourAnon the Midnight Jinx stated, "Wonder if tomorrow is going to be bad for Wall Street. We can only hope." An unnamed Department of Homeland Security official told Bloomberg there were no indications of a cyber attack so far. President Obama had received a briefing on the situation. A statement posted to the NYSE Facebook page stated, "The issue we are experiencing is an internal technical issue and is not the result of a cyber breach. We choose to suspend trading on the New York Stock Exchange to avoid problems arising from our technical issue. NYSE-listed securities continue to trade unaffected on other market centers." Wednesday itself appeared to be the unfortunate subject of many such technical difficulties. In addition to the NYSE halt, New York City subway commuters experienced lengthy delays with trains unexpectedly stalled in some stations. All United Airlines flights had to be grounded when the company's computer system mysteriously malfunctioned, and 2,500 people in Washington, D.C. were left in the dark after a power outage, also unexplained. Previous threats to the stock exchange by Anonymous in 2011 were more direct than Tuesday night's gentle curse. One message issued a warning the collective would destroy the NYSE, while another vowed to erase the NYSE from the internet altogether. Officials are maintaining their denial of any cyber mischief, though they have not issued any plausible explanation either yet. Now, I looked at what was going on with the stock exchange and where it closed yesterday. And I'm looking at it, and basically the stock was dropping off pretty good all day long. And it looked like there were these spikes that just kind of came out of nowhere, and then it start dropping off rapid, and another spike, and it looked like there were a few spikes, and then trading stopped. And now trading did, where did I write it down? Okay, stock trading resumed at 3:10 Eastern today. But maybe this is something similar to what the Chinese did by, well, if we stop it for a while, maybe we can reduce the free fall that it seems to be going on. I think some of those spikes were manipulations trying to keep it from falling off too sharply. But, you know, that's all speculation, but what did happen? We don't know. We don't know if we'll ever know the truth if something did happen. But we also know that the stock market does not represent our economy in the first place. And I think a lot of people put too much into that. Okay, I'm going to move on here. I have one here from We Are Change. The elites plan for a California drought. Fourth generation farmer speaks out. This video was originally produced by Kayla Moon, a Change Media University student who is working as an independent journalist. It was predicted by NASA that California only has a year left of surface water. We are halfway through the year in 2015, and our representatives are just now holding town hall meetings with very little discussion with real-time solutions. Abundant Harvest founder, fourth-generation farmer, and activist speaks on the conscious demise of the American empire if we cannot come together as a nation to solve these vital issues. We don't need to come together as a nation. There's a lot of water that used to be held basically in reservoirs, and there was a lot of water that no longer is stored because of a lot of the activists in the area. You'll kill off this snail, you'll kill off this fish, this microorganism lives nowhere else in this part of California. Therefore, we need to save its habitat. And believe me, I'm an outdoors person. I really believe in trying to preserve habitats, and I believe it's only successfully done through private ownership. People that own lots of land and manage their land do a lot better job than what government does. Government, they're more worried about policing land, and they don't really manage it that well. And I know people, and I've lost a friend last year that had many acres of land and really managed it well, where wild turkey, deer, any type of animal that you could possibly think of, coyotes, they were all abundant. And he worked a lot of the land too, but worked it in a way when he's been a family friend, but we had gotten close long while back, and really started hanging out a lot more. And I got him on to doing the non-GMO, the really going organic and everything, and it makes for a better, I believe, animal population, and it seemed to really work. But private ownership, and the problem with it is there's areas that were like his property that I've seen, and what has happened is government has come through in the name, and usually with the backing of one of these organizations, environmental organizations, helping to preserve blah blah blah, connected to a world organization, connected to the UN. But they come through and they go, since your property flooded because of the heavy rains, this is considered wetlands area because water collected here. And you can no longer do anything on this property. There's been people that have attempted to kind of do a pond. There was one couple I heard about, and luckily the group trying to push, or whoever reported them didn't get what they wished for. But basically they were just kind of doing it on their own. They had their own little water pump, and they could pump the water out and dig a little bit deeper and let it fill up. It was just kind of a hobby type thing. When they had extra money to run their machine to go dig the hole deeper, they would do it. When they had someone that needed some dirt, That way they could get rid of it. They would make it a little bit deeper. But when they first started, they kind of got a bowl going, just a slight dip. And it started, it would flood out, and well, that's a wetlands area, and they didn't want them working that land till they proved that it wasn't, that they made that, because it was something where they did it one year, grew over weeds and stuff, and flooded out, and had setting water in it, and someone seen them pumping the water out, and they were destroying a wetlands area. No, that was their property. They made that dip, and they were going to turn it into a pond. It's just one of those things where they come through and say you can't work the land. Then in a lot of cases that I've seen, the way that people are working the land also make for that environment that the people are trying to preserve. Well, that wasn't there before. They kind of artificially made a environment that makes it conducive for these type of animals to be abundant. That way they can, live off the land too. They can hunt it. They can have their family come and hunt, things like that. But we have a problem with out in the West. There's been a big problem with, well, you can't hold water, you can't have ponds, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't divert this river, we have to open up these dams because we can't dam up this because of a fish or a snail or whatever, and then, oh, well, we ain't got water. But I'm going to play this. This, again, was produced by Kayla Moon, a Change Media University student, independent journalist. And this was posted by We Are Change on YouTube.
This is Kayla Moon, and I'm here with Uncle Vern. We're at his family farm right now. We're going to go ahead and talk about the situation with the drought that is occurring, and we're going to talk about some solutions. So I want to start off, how much does California and their farming affect the nation as well as the world?
When I was in college, I was really proud to be part of an industry that fed the world. That's what we said we did, and I was part of that. We now, Kayla, don't even feed ourselves. So America's a net food importing country as on a dollar basis. The things we export are typically subsidized grain, and then we import a lot of our vegetables and things that are higher labor.
What do you believe is the importance of agriculture and supporting the agricultural community?
There's nothing more essential. There's no more essential industry than food. You can live without everything else. You can live without oil. You can live without Hollywood. You can live without, you can even live without teachers, but you can't live without food. It's very, very important for a country to retain its sovereignty to be able to feed itself. We've tripled our population in California since the 60s, but we've done nothing to increase our water containment system, our water capturing system, or our water distribution system. It's all way back there from the 60s when we had some visionary leaders that built basically the marvel of the world. The California irrigation system is the marvel of the world. In my case, I'm fourth generation. My kids are fifth, and the grandkids are sixth. So, people who made it through world wars and depression and all kinds of economic upheaval, they made it. They handed it to you. Now you've got the baton, and your job is to get it to the next generation.
If there were to be an agricultural collapse in California, what would that look like?
Well, we see plenty of movies, don't we, where there isn't any food and stuff. Boy, I don't even want to think of that. Surely we're smarter than that, Kayla. Surely we can come together and solve these things. I know there are people, elitists, that think there's too many people on the planet, so some should just die. There's elitists that think we shouldn't be farming. We shouldn't be using irrigation in the San Joaquin Valley, that everything should go back to how it used to be. It's incredible to listen to that line of reasoning. It's just not something I can get my brain around. My whole life and my whole career has been about feeding people, and I think everybody wants to be fed. And indeed, everybody does, but it just seems that the elitists don't share that. They don't feel a connection to every man. What I think we need to have is responsibility. We need responsibility for outcome. So, for instance, if we're going to dump 7 million acre feet to save a fish, then show me the fish. There should be a fish, shouldn't there? If we're dumping, if we put 7 million acre feet into crops, I can tell you how many crops we would produce. I can tell you how many jobs we would create, how many, lots of ways. And agriculture is always under the microscope because there's so few of us. Farmers are 0.5% of America's population. We have to be very accountable and responsible for how we use resources. Even though we bought and paid for them, they're kind of now considered everybody's. So if that's how it is, that's fine, but everyone should be responsible. Every user of these resources should be responsible, not for intent, but for outcome. If we're going to hold people accountable for intent, that's a subjective standard. We need objective standards, and people need to be responsible for the outcome of their actions. If 51% of the water is going to the ocean, what's the benefit of that? We feel good, don't we? But if we're doing that to bring back a fish, to bring salmon back up the San Joaquin, which is the one that runs through your town, find me a salmon. They've dumped a bunch of salmon fry in the river. They're not making it back up, you know. These elitists need to be held responsible for the outcome of their action. That's number one. Then number two, we're not dumb people. Californians aren't dumb people. And the technology exists. We talked about that acre foot. For $500, we can desalinate an acre foot of seawater. 80% of Californians live within 50 miles of the ocean. For a fourth the cost of this train we're building, we could produce more water. Farmers would be happy to pay for it. People whose lawns are drying up, you remember that acre foot? That's $40 a month. We don't need to be treated like dogs being thrown bones by these elitists. Here, you peasants, you fight over this because there's only this much. That isn't the way Californians are. That isn't the way Americans are.
Every single human on this planet to survive needs shelter, water, and food. And love. We'll put the love in there too, okay? With the housing crash in 2008, that was people's shelters. You know, that was their homes that they lost. And that was huge. And now, you know, with our huge producer and exporter of our food with a lack of water, do you believe that we could be seeing the crippling of an American empire, whether intentional or just because we're not responding to what is going on here and now?
Yes, I do believe it is intentional. At the top, with those elitists, when you get into their enclave, they want agriculture to stop in California. That is what's coming from their heart. They'll never admit it in public, but I've been in their private groups, and that is how they feel amongst themselves. And these people wield a lot of power. If we ceased to produce our own food, can we recover from that? Yeah, but not like tomorrow. Agriculture's the biggest industry. If we divert production to other parts of the world, you know, how insane is that? How insane is that? What civilized country in the history of the world, Kayla, has ever knowingly destroyed its own food source? Where has that ever happened? It's never happened before that a civilized country has knowingly destroyed its own food source. And that's what's happening in California right today. Would we recover from it? I don't even want to go there. Surely we're smarter than that. Surely as people start to figure this out and wade through the misinformation, surely people are intelligent enough to say, by golly, we ought to feed ourselves. This is crazy that we wouldn't either take the water we're sending to the ocean in a time of crisis and start growing broccoli with it, or if we don't have the courage to do that, then put a tube in the ocean, build some plants, run them on solar. So now you've got the energy of the sun, taking the salt out of the sea, putting that brine right back into the ocean. You can use diffusers and get it out there so it doesn't all just end up in one spot. And create water. If you watch the Israel Project, Israel, Australia, countries with a lot less water than we have are doing it. Israel now has more water than they know what to do with, and they're much drier than we are. So surely we're intelligent enough to work together to hold these elitists accountable for the outcome of their actions. But it's going to take an informed citizenry, so that's why I appreciate what you're doing. People need to have honest truth. And don't just listen to me. Go get your own information, you know. This is just one farmer with mud on his boots talking from his perspective. But it's a pretty well-rounded perspective, and I'm positive what I'm saying would hold in any court, or I wouldn't say it. So we can fix this thing, and we can fix it quickly. When the freeways collapsed in California from the earthquake, they suspended all the environmental laws, suspended everything other than making sure we built freeways back right, and we got them back up in a few months. You know, that would have taken years and years and years under normal conditions. Why do we need to have this scarcity mentality? Our company's named Abundant Harvest Organics, and we have an abundance mentality. So we're only limited by the energy of the sun, our own ingenuity, and the restrictions we place on ourselves. We're an intelligent people. We have options. It's not like we have to invent the option. The options are there. We just need to have the intelligence and the courage to exercise them, and the courage to hold people responsible for the outcome of their actions. That's what I want more than anything, that people be held responsible for the outcome of their actions.
Thank you.
Again, that's from We Are Change on YouTube, but that was independent journalist Kayla Moon from Change Media University. Now, there's other things out there you can find about basically the engineered drought is what I like to call it, because that's really kind of what it seems to be. Now, he talked about California when the freeways collapsed. They could suspend environmental laws and get those up in a couple months. But they constantly are putting more environmental laws that restrict your food consumption. Now, I had someone put this to me one time. They say they limit your ability to access to water. They can't stop the sun, even though they probably would like to if they could. Stop accessibility to water. Everybody's on, most farmers grow genetically modified. Genetically modified infiltrates the natural non-GMOs. Basically turns them into GMOs. They got Terminator seeds out there. And, they got the patents on the ones that aren't Terminators, where they'll come after you for growing it without their permission and selling it without them getting a profit off of it. But then you look at places like over in Europe where you can find an abundance of organic and non-GMO and all of this. Well, this farmer, this all kind of started popping back up in my head the first time I listened to this. And listening to the farmer talk about, he's been in these groups and meetings where they basically kind of, in a way, want to go ahead and get rid of the farming in America. Well, would that not be a great way to do it? Well, you can't grow anything because you can't find nothing but non-GMOs. Therefore, you're relying on other countries that have non-GMOs and don't have patent things. And, Monsanto's been trying over in Europe to get patents on the non-GMOs, natural things. But basically a complete control over food supply. And then if we did want to start farming again, well, you would have to rely on, again, probably Europe, if you're trying to get the non-GMOs. And, well, if Monsanto has a control over that, you might have problems. So, yeah, there is definitely some type of manipulation going on that many people have come to realize on the food supply. And I think a lot of the times these environmentalists, they're trendies that are going along with some. Well, I kind of, in a way, when I was younger, would get kind of pulled into this just slightly, but I also kind of was always a critical thinker and didn't trust what people told me unless I could verify it. I was just that type of person. I understood people lied, people had agendas. I really questioned a lot of things. Well, a lot of these people get pulled into this. They don't realize, well, yes, you love nature. You love being able to go out in nature, maybe go fishing. A lot of these agendas that are put on by the heads of these groups really look at humans as parasites. They look at themselves as being beyond human in a way. that they are more intelligent, that they might, have their own agenda. That well, I don't think people should even live in this area. Therefore, I don't care if it hurts them. I'll use this for my, reason to, stop water, or, it becomes an agenda by multiple people, by multiple groups, that a lot of trendies just get swept right into and go along with it, and they don't realize what they do in the long term. Excuse me again. I do want to move on here in a minute, but I wanted to go ahead, since it's 7:05 already, and play a Liberty report from Ron Paul here. So here's the latest Liberty Report, Ron Paul Liberty Report.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Daniel McAdams is with me today. Daniel?
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Well, good. I'm trying to find a little good news today. This is always something we should be promoting. But although there's a seemingly reasonably good news, I'm wondering whether it really is. And the headline I'm referring to is U.S. to cut 40,000 soldiers from the Army. And maybe we're going to get a peace dividend. And the troop levels have gone down. There was, at one time, at the peak of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, there were 570,000 American troops, soldiers. And they're down to, if they get rid of the 40,000 more, they'll get down to 450,000. But the big question is what is their strategy? It's hard for me to believe that they're really changing their policies, because at the same time we're going to have less troops, and we're going to save some money and this sort of thing. At the same time, increase the war in Syria and expand the war in Yemen and on, and no weapons. And quite frankly, the troop level may be going down. Why is the expenditures doing this? They're still going up. What do you think they're telling us here?
Well, I think troops cost a lot of money, and they don't make a lot of money for the military-industrial complex. Plus, the U.S. has shown a preference, especially under Obama, for different kinds of wars that don't require troops. Troops also have a huge political implication when you send troops over. That's why there's no troops on the ground, no troops on the ground. So you use drones, you use bombs, you use technical gadgets for warfare, you do regime change, you do subversion, and you employ the CIA. So it doesn't mean any less war or any less expenditures. It means lower political risk for not putting the troops out there.
And they're not going to change their policy to the policy we suggest. Yeah. That's for sure. But, when I have dealt with the Fed on a few occasions over the years, I've frequently used, because so many others use, I say, never listen to the Fed. Only pay attention to what they do. So if they say they're going to cut back, you have to wait and see what happens. I just wonder if the strategy might not be to stir up the opposition to pulling back at all, because already you hear the hawk saying, you mean cut back, we'll never be able to win a war again. and yet at the same time, they still want to increase these wars. But they're building up the fear and the concerns, and the lobbyists are coming in, and they want to keep building these weapons. But my suspicion is that there will be a coalition now that the Republicans are in charge of the Congress, and they'll get enough Democrats, and that will be to repeal sequestering, especially, for the military, because you hear a lot of times they're still concerned about increasing the spending. At the same time, yes, fancy talk about cutting back. I heard that talk way back when Rumsfeld was in. He pretended, oh yeah, we just need an elite, quick reacting military, and that can handle it all. But we know he was a champion of the econs, but he was also a champion for the military-industrial complex, which makes your point as well.
Exactly, and I think you're right. The timing has a lot to do with this. Not only do we face the so-called sequester later this year, which, as you know, is not a decrease in spending, but a reduction in the increase, but you also have the new national military strategy of the U.S. came out within the last few days, and that talks about the U.S. maintaining its global dominance overseas. It talks about how there'll be more conflicts developing more rapidly, they'll last longer, and take place on a more technically challenged battlefield. Yeah. So you have this, and so I think you need to stoke up fear. But you know, this report came out yesterday, this 40,000 cut, like it was a leaked document. But what's interesting is I went back and I looked, and the Army Chief of Staff, General Odierno, said way back in January that, yeah, we're gonna go down to 450. We're gonna cut 40,000 troops in the next couple of years. So this is not news.
Now, this map we have here showing, you know, where all our bases are, they're not talking about really reducing those bases. They're always talking about adding more. And that means the presence in the Middle East, especially, and around the world, and now we're going east and we have to take the Chinese on, that's not going to change at all. But it's still just talk about maybe cutting back, and our presence will remain overseas. And there's a lot of special interests that are involved here. But you know, the other day we talked about the failure of this training, because this is what they want to do, depend on surrogates to fight these wars so Americans don't get killed. But we were making fun because they had trained 100 of the 5,000 that they had the goal for the end of the year of people in Syria wanting to come over and be trained by Americans. Well, you know, the Secretary of Defense was on yesterday. He said they only trained 65. So, you know, it's a failed policy, and yet they will not recognize it. It's a failed policy from our viewpoint, especially because we spend a lot of money. We don't see our national security being enhanced, but it might not be a failed policy when it comes to making some money for some people.
Yeah. It's the biggest scam in history on the American people, that they're led to believe that all of these bases overseas that we saw in these graphics, somehow that makes them safer, when in fact, as you know, it makes them much more vulnerable because of the local populations that are irritated and the destabilization.
You know, one question I've gotten, which I think is challenging, because they say you can't win wars with bombs, you have to have people on the ground and this sort of thing. But what about the people who have argued about the Balkans? You know, that was a lot of killing and a lot of bombing, and they claim victory there, but my guess is that we still have a fair amount of instability there. But on the short run, how legitimate is their claim that bombs can produce victories?
Well, it's still, in the Balkans is a great example because it's bubbling just below the surface. It's only an infinite occupation by foreign troops that's kept it from bubbling back up again. So there's no stability there whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, I cannot see how any of this will ever change. I do not think we can claim this is a little bit good news today. It's news that is meant to sound good, but it should make everybody more alert. But you know, especially our listening audience aren't all intrigued with believing everything the government says anyway, but we just need a broader audience that questions what the government tells us. And it's always encouraging to hear some of these statistics that a certain percentage of Americans are questioning what the government says, you know, on these commissions, you know, the Warren Commission and you know, the 9/11 Commission. People don't believe this anymore, but they have to be convinced that we're not going to destroy our country, that we're not going to defend our country, and that this is necessary for our national defense, because they have short memories and they can get very frightened. And just think of how some of these atrocities by ISIS has motivated a lot of people. Well, we have to do something about them. And that, of course, is not an easy job to do either.
Well, you know what else is encouraging? There was some statistics that came out in the last few days. There was a poll done, and I think 70% of Americans think that the mainstream media is completely biased and is making up stories and is totally not credible. So that's good, because the thing, when I was reading about this big news today about the 40,000, I was reading, it just happened to be USA Today, but it could be any mainstream publication. The way they phrase it is to, and we had the same note on our paper, fear. It's to make fear. Here's what USA Today said: with the sequester, the U.S. would not be able to meet its current deployment and respond to demands for troops in other regions.
So they're setting the stage, huh?
We're vulnerable, and look, We saw on this map of, that's the last thing they'll do is pull any of these troops back. This is a fight between people who want a lot more bases or just a little more bases.
Well, they have to build up fear, but they also have to, have a devil. You had to have Saddam Hussein, and you had to have bin Laden, even though bin Laden at one time was on our side, this sort of thing.
So was Saddam.
Right, he got his first nuclear reactor from us.
Yeah.
So, yes, this is the tragedy of a foreign policy of intervention. You have all variations of intervention, a lot of it or a little bit of it, but the principle of intervention is wrong.
Yeah.
And yet we never get that offered. We say, well, we can take this. And then you have McCain and Graham saying, yes, intervention is good, but this is how much we have. And then you have a guy like Obama, who's an interventionist, but he wants to sound a little bit softer, and he'll say, well, we ought to be at least talking to the Iranians and opening up doors with the Cubans. And you think, well, maybe that is a sign. But they have trouble thinking about this in principle. What is the principle of the foreign policy? And yet they get trapped into this, and this has been known for a long time. And that trap is that if you don't support those in the media and those in the government and all the propaganda and the military retiree, that you're unpatriotic and you don't care about your country and you don't support the troops. And people get trapped into that, and politicians, even though they know it's not true, they get intimidated because their goal is to stay in Congress and do good things for the people. So on certain times, you sort of have to go along and respond to that. But I think the propagandists are the real threat to us, and they've been around for a long, long time in this country and every country. They're with us today, and the whole thing is that we have to challenge them, and there's only one way to challenge them, and that is with the truth and putting it out there and give them a better idea on how we should defend this country. And it isn't with super patriotism and adherence to some rules that do nothing more than aggravate, antagonize, and express aggression against other nations. But the whole idea of peace and prosperity comes from the idea that we don't force other people by intimidation to do our will. And if they do it, we give them money. If they don't do it, we bomb them. That has to stop, and the sooner the better. So non-intervention is the goal that we seek, and hopefully we can keep spreading that message for peace and prosperity. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and please come back soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Go find them and share those. He's exactly right. We might be cutting troops, but this has nothing to do with the reduce in our military-industrial complex, and it only shows that we are moving further and further to the drone and other type of ways. We will continue to have a decent-sized army, military. When it comes to troops, maybe not directly in the Army, but combined military groups, we still will have a number of troops to occupy the mini bases and the more bases that we put out there. But when it comes to actual warfare, I'm sure they just go, we could always have a draft if we need troops. But what this does also is less troops that are in battle, the less disgruntled employees they'll have. And that's really, I think, how they look at that. Okay, let's move on to some news here. Okay, here we go. This one out of Truth and Media. U.S. Senate wants to censor terrorist activity on social media sites. The Senate Intelligence Committee has approved a new measure which would force social media sites such as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube to report content that is believed to be connected to terrorist activity. The Washington Post reported that the measure will be included as part of the Intelligence Authorization Act of 2016. The Senate Intelligence Committee approved the measure in a closed session on Wednesday, July 1st. The measure is supposed to help intelligence and law enforcement officials detect terror threats. The Post reports it would not require companies to monitor their sites if they do not already do so, said a committee aide who requested anonymity because the bill has not yet been filed. The measure applies to electronic communication service providers, which include email services such as Google and Yahoo. The bill would require any online company that obtains actual knowledge of any terrorist activity shall provide to the appropriate authorities the facts or circumstances of the alleged terrorist activity. Google, Facebook, and Twitter declined to comment to the Post. However, anonymous industry officials reportedly called the measure a bad idea. Gregory Nojim, senior counsel for the Center of Democracy and Technology, told the Post he believed the measure would erode privacy in the name of fighting terrorism. If it becomes law, their natural tendency will be to err on the side of reporting anything that might be characterized as terrorist activity, even if it is not, and their duty to report will chill speech on the internet that relates to terrorism. The U.S. government already maintains a massive surveillance state, including a number of programs that gather internet user data. This latest measure would only further codify the government's ability to force private companies to hand over sensitive information. And that's the end of the article there by Derek Bros, truthandmedia.com. What this, also does is terrorist activity. That's their definition. The problem is that definition is not a definition. It is a broad wording, therefore, like the article said, it would cause companies to basically report anything, even if it isn't terrorist activity, that could even in the slightest way be construed as maybe an indication of a terrorist activity, and report that. It would cause mass reporting of people, and they, of course, government would love this, because this means that anybody that speaks out against government could be potentially considered a terrorist, because there would be this broad reporting that basically we're not even taking the chance that you're just talking about something, but we're just going to report you. And I definitely see this not only hurting just, the everyday person that just might be lashing out about something they've seen on the news, but really where it could also really, really hurt people is independent alternative media outlets and independent freelance journalists. They could literally use this, and then, you would probably see a mass amount of independent, freelance, alternative media people being put on no-fly list, or, being restricted, make it really hard for them to get press credentials, which in some types of ways it's already hard. Definitely for a lot of the figures you really want to confront, which We Are Change, Luke Rudowski, Change Media University, really kind of get into ways that you can still get into that. But You're going to have these mass lists where they're just going to enter your name and be like, no, you're blacklisted. We know that they already want to set up these type systems. We already know that they are monitoring, like the article said, all this, information. And this only codifies that their intent is really to continue to clamp down on the people, not terrorism. Terrorism is way too broad a word that we need to really blackball the word terrorism as any type of legal definition of anything. Because people can feel like they're terrorized over nothing. There's people with phobias that feel terrorized. Really, terrorism can be defined by a person just what does terrorize them. But we need to really did this person engage in abridging other people's rights? Really, that needs to be a definition. And the problem with that versus terrorism as a definition is terrorism, because it can be put into terms that might not go along with your definition of what terrorism means to you. But if you get into something that is not a broad word that can be defined different ways, like the word terrorism, but you actually get into a defined term talking about, does this abridge people's rights and natural law, it'd be more evident who's committing crimes. And the establishment and the elitists, the puppets and the puppeteers would not like that. Okay. Talking about puppets and puppeteers, got a few that just kind of amazed me. I posted them on Facebook on Anti-Tyranny News' page. This first one out of MediaTrackers.org. Senator Baldwin, First Amendment doesn't apply to individuals. Oh, yeah, you're Senator Tammy Baldwin, Democrat from Wisconsin, says the First Amendment religious liberty protections don't apply to individuals. On MSNBC last week, Wisconsin's junior senator claimed that the Constitution's protection of the free exercise of religion extends only to religious institutions, and that individuals do not have the right to the free exercise of their own religion. During the MSNBC appearance, which was covered by Breitbart and Newsbusters, Baldwin appeared clueless to the fact that the free exercise clause of the First Amendment has already been found to apply to individuals, not just churches, synagogues, mosques, and other institutions of faith and worship. The full text of the First Amendment reads, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech speech or of the press or of the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The relevant portion of Baldwin's MSNBC appearance transcript reads, "Certainly the First Amendment says that in institutions of faith that there is absolute power to, to observe deeply held religious beliefs. But I don't think it extends far beyond that. In this context, they're talking about expanding this far beyond our churches and synagogues to businesses and individuals across this country. I think there are clear limits that have been set in other contexts, and we ought to abide by those in this new context across America. The First Amendment free exercise clause says nothing about protecting religious institutions, but not individuals. Congress shall make no law prohibiting the free exercise of religion." University of St. Thomas Law School professor Thomas Berg writes in the Heritage Foundation's Guide to the Constitution that Supreme Court jurisprudence has long concluded that the clause protects religious motivated conduct as well as belief. Because, quote, "because it is now accepted that the free exercise of religion clause protects religiously motivated conduct as well as belief, the most important modern issue has been whether the protection only runs against laws that target religion itself for restriction, or more broadly, whether the clause sometimes requires an exemption from a generally applicable law." Berg goes on to explore instances of individuals, not just institutions, receiving protection for their free exercise of religion thanks to the First Amendment. Fascinatingly, Baldwin is on the record claiming that another portion of the First Amendment should apply to institutions and should exclusively apply to individuals, a contradiction with her present arguments. In the landmark case Citizens United versus FEC 2010, the U.S. Supreme Court held that corporations, unions, and other organizations could spend money advocating for or against political candidates and issues. The court said such spending was free speech protected by the First Amendment. Baldwin made opposition to Citizens United a consistent theme of her campaign for U.S. Senate and her time as a senator. "I think it is so important that we overturn Citizens United," Baldwin declared in a 2012 video for the left-wing publication The Nation. Baldwin claimed that corporations, essentially institutions, should not be entitled to the same freedoms afforded to individuals. "It is far too often the case in Washington that powerful corporate interests, the wealthy and the well-connected, get to write the rules, and now the Supreme Court has given them more power to rule the ballot box by creating an uneven playing field," Baldwin complained. After another free speech-related decision by the Supreme Court, already she has voted in favor of a constitutional amendment that would specifically curtail the First Amendment free speech protections by denying them to institutions and organizations. As free speech and the free exercise of religion remain contentious topics, there is no sign Baldwin intends to reach a consistent position on whether or not the Constitution applies to individuals, institutions, or both. And you can find that at mediatrackers.org. Senator Baldwin, First Amendment doesn't apply to individuals. And I also posted that at anti-tyrannynews.com on Facebook, facebook.com/anti-tyranny-news. Now, talking about the First Amendment, add one here. Let's see what time we have here. Okay, we got plenty of time. This one's a video. Do you know the First Amendment? Can college students answer basic questions about their constitutionally protected rights? And like I said, the youth is one of the main things because they're the future. And we have public schools and institutions trying to manipulate the youth for these agendas to take our freedom, to give us crap in return, and try to convince us that we should be happy with it while they live a luxurious multinational lifestyle while you're scraping up for food to put on your plate. And they want you to be happy with it. And well, if they can make you feel bad that you are you, which it seems they do pretty good with the youth on that. If not, they give them pills. If so, they give them pills. They really do not teach what freedom is. They teach what freedoms you should accept and what freedoms you should not expect. And basically sit down, shut up, obey. So I want to play this clip here. This was filed by Jakari Jackson at Infowars.com.
Excuse me, we're asking people if they know their First Amendment rights. You know your First Amendment rights, bro? Okay, well, I'm glad that he does know. Excuse me, sir, we're asking people if they can name their First Amendment rights.
I guess not.
No, guess not. All right. There's an honest gentleman, though.
Yeah.
Passionate about her freedom of speech.
Okay. Freedom of speech, religion, press.
You got some money, too. I'll go to you real quick.
I think it's like to overthrow the, like not overthrow the government, but like protest.
Religion. Like redress for grievances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're asking people if they know their First Amendment rights. The right to text, apparently. We're asking people if they can name their First Amendment rights. Okay. First Amendment rights, sir? Sir? No? Hello, ladies. We're asking people if they can name their First Amendment rights. No? We've had so many people who have refused to comment. I guess they are trying to exercise their First Amendment right to free speech or lack thereof, as some of the cases may be. Let's see what these people have to say. How you doing, guys? We're asking people if they can name their First Amendment rights.
First Amendment?
First Amendment. Freedom of speech, freedom of...
Religion.
Okay.
Freedom of the press.
Freedom of the press. Oh, very good.
We're gonna be sophomores next year in high school.
Wow. First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, freedom of...
The First Amendment right?
Yes, sir.
Freedom of speech, religion.
Can you name your First Amendment rights?
Freedom of speech, freedom of religion. That's
well,
all
you
I
know, most Americans don't even know religion is included, so you are ahead of the curve.
All right, good.
Very good.
Oh my gosh, you have to ask me this now.
All right, I'll give you one. Freedom of speech.
Oh, of course. Okay. Freedom of religion.
Speech.
No. Freedom of... I have no idea.
No idea?
So like freedom of speech and freedom of religion.
I don't know.
You
I don't know what is First Amendment.
You don't know? Are you from... Where are you from?
I'm from China.
Isn't that the so Second Amendment is freedom of speech. First Amendment would be no. Second Amendment, I'm an idiot. The First Amendment is the freedom of speech. Second Amendment is the right to bear arms.
Of the press.
Freedom of the press?
I think, yes. I mean, there are other amendments: freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, freedom of religious practice, the right to carry firearms. I believe that's Second Amendment.
Religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, and there's one last one.
redress for grievances. You did pretty well. Are you a student here at UT?
Yes, I'm an incoming freshman. So.
Wow, so she's a freshman. I think you know more than most of the upperclassmen do.
Maybe.
I don't do political.
You don't do political?
No.
You do pizza, though? If you had a right to free pizza, would you get down with that one?
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
I want to talk about a perfect storm today. And the perfect storm I'm going to discuss.
Okay. Now, most people just, but there was one thing about this whole thing. There was a poll out that a study out that only 19% of college students knew what the First Amendment was. But when you do hear the people, the one that's the most rarest other than redress of grievance, because, well, if you just say the ability to confront the government for what they are doing, it's redress of grievance. But another one that is rarely said, it was said, but it tend to be, freedom of speech and freedom of religion. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Freedom of speech, freedom of press. Oh, there was a lot of people that when they do know freedom of religion or freedom of speech, they forget freedom of the press. And that should be noted because of how much press is out there. And for these people that watch mainstream media and see that, well, mainstream media is the only one that ever gets close to the president or ever gets, what happened to all these other media outlets that aren't so big? Why do you have to be a part of ABC? Because that's not really freedom of press when you only allow a select group of press to be allowed to be a part of this. That's not freedom of press. There shouldn't be any special treatment towards any of the press. And I think that is one of the big things that is always missed about the First Amendment. That and your redress of grievance and your right to assemble. Now many people claim, well, that can be done at a state level because, well, it only stops Congress. Well, one, if you don't have the right to do it, you can't vote someone else to do what you don't have the right to do. You shouldn't be able to do things that go against the Constitution. If you're looking at this at a constitutional level, yes, states can enact things, but it still needs to go along with your rights. So if it abridges someone's rights, that's when the federal government, the only time federal government should ever step in under the constitutional model that's supposed to be a free republic and say, no, you're abridging their right, therefore you become the aggressor as a state, therefore, no, you can't be the aggressor. You can only be the defender. But we have so much against that. The whether it be the federal government, state governments, it's so corrupt anymore. Because the people that actually want to live free try to just live free and they're not involved. That's why the whole theory of having a political structure, governmental structure, doesn't usually turn out too well. Now, if you have it more at a local level where don't piss off the town because the town will revolt, it makes it harder. People can find time to go a few blocks and protest. Makes it harder to go across the country. And they know this. Truth in Media. Let me bring it back up. Excuse me, I'm having an issue here. Okay, well, I'm getting this back up. Let me pull up my Facebook page here. Okay. I have one here. Louisiana law makes saggy pants a criminal offense. Now, I'm not too big on a lot of the saggy pants where they're sagging, but my pants always hung lower than what my parents liked. They wore theirs up to their belly button. Mine's right below my belly button. I don't know. It's just pants aren't made like they were before, where they're up past your belly button. But it says here, a Louisiana law introduced in the parish of Jefferson Davis makes it a crime for people to wear their pants in any way that can be defined by police as sagging. We contacted the police in Jefferson Davis Parish and asked for specifics. They told us anything that is too low. We asked them what too low meant. They seemed to be short on answers, but local police jurors unanimously passed an ordinance which makes it illegal to appear in a public place with pants that are below the waist, or which expose the skin below the waist, or undergarments. If that sounds well defined to you, you haven't seen how this plays out in practice. Citizens of the parish, particularly members of the African American community, tell us that the waist is an ill-defined concept that gives the police authority to issue you a citation if your pants are simply sitting loosely on your waist without a belt. Even the smallest amount of boxers or briefs sticking above the pants lines can be defined by police as criminal. Police juror Steve Eastman told local reporters that saggy pants have been a long-running problem in the Louisiana parish. Hold on. Why is it well, because we could see them sagging their... Oh, suck it up, Buttercup. Come on. When you dress like a dork, don't hear us complaining. When you dress like you're still in the 1980s, we don't complain. When you wear your, suits everywhere you go, we don't complain. That's not offensive. Not to you. But the saggy pants are. What about us? Saggy pants might not be offensive to those people, and your suit might be. Why is this guy coming in to, go grocery shopping in suits all the time? And why does he, he only wears suits? You think he's better than us? So, yeah, being offended is bullcrap. Says here, I had complaints from security guards around the courthouse that there was an issue with people not being respectfully dressed in the courtroom area, he said in an interview with local KPLC. So initially, I was going to be on the courthouse grounds, and other jurors felt that it was important parish-wide. Juror Brian Bueller suggested that they take things even further and prohibit any visibility of undergarments in public. So even 1 centimeter of an undergarment comes above the waistline on your pants, you are now a criminal in the parish. This could result in a $50 fine for the first offense, followed by a $100 fine for every subsequent violation, according to the American press. Wearing saggy pants as a trend is thought to have originated in prison, where inmates are not allowed to wear belts. President Barack Obama said brothers should pull up their pants. You are walking by your mother, your grandmother, your underwear is showing. What's wrong with that? Come on. Some people might not want to see your underwear. I'm one of them. But now communities around the country, such as Wildwood, New Jersey, Florida, and now Jefferson Davis, Louisiana, have made the fashion statement a criminal act. They aren't alone in Louisiana, where municipalities including Maryville, Kinder, Elton, Welsh, and Opelousas passed similar measures, but civil liberties groups claim such a ban is unconstitutional against the protections of the 14th Amendment, which guarantees that no citizen should be deprived of life, liberty, or property. Whatever you think about the trend, wearing your pants how you want to wear them, particularly when your body is still covered by an undergarment, would appear to be a matter of personal choice and liberty, wouldn't you think? And I think most people would think this. Definitely, if you put it in perspective, if your fashion was all of a sudden outlawed. And you can find that at countercurrentnews.com. And before we come to the end of broadcast, I'll sneak this in before I cover this last part. Go check out the UCY store, ucy.tv. Click the UCY store tab. And UCY has partnered with Amazon and created their own little store that provides you with all the prepping and camping gear you could possibly want, including radiation preparation. Check them out, ucy.tv, the UCY store tab. When you buy, you're getting the same great deals through Amazon. At the same time, you're helping support alternative media, ucy.tv and UCY radio. And that gives people like me and the other hosts here on the network a platform to spread information and get the truth out there and empower people to question and critically think. You can also prepare by buying metal and silver. Precious metals are one of the things that I do to try to hedge against inflation and other things that manipulate the dollar. And I choose Amagi Metals for my source. And I partnered with them. So if you go to antityrannynews.com/metal, you can check out their great deals. And at the same time, you're helping support this broadcast and antityrannynews.com. So go check them out. Now, this last thing I want to cover here before we end this broadcast. I hope this becomes a trend, definitely when it comes to people that want actual freedom, not just some communists or socialists, but people that understand how important freedom is and how important it is to get away from the centralized government and stealing people's wealth to give to people that have not worked for it. Not saying everybody that wants help hasn't worked for what they should be getting, but to steal from me to give to them while the ultra rich get tax breaks, that's not going to help anything to support that system. But here's out of truthandmedia.com, poll independents will soon outnumber Republicans and Democrats combined. A recent NBC poll confirms that the partisan political environment is, in fact, taking a toll on the two major parties, with voter registration revealing that self-identified independents are the fastest-growing voting bloc in America. NBC commentators coin it the rise of an independent era, reporting that in 2014, the number of the people self-identifying as independent was a 39%, passing that of Democrats 32% and Republicans 23%. 45% of voters now self-identify as independent. Hashtag election at Chuck Todd. As of 2015, the number of self-identifying independents grown to 45%, just 2 points shy of the number of Democrats and Republicans combined. The largest political party in the United States is no longer a party at all, NBC commentator Chuck Todd reports. Quote, in the 31 states plus the District of Columbia where voters have to pick up party when registering to vote, unaffiliated or no party voters are now the leading political party in 12 of those states. And in a few of them, they are the majority of all registered voters. In Florida, a major 2016 battleground state, the number of independent voters has grown by 1 million voters in the last 10 years. Democrats have only seen an increase of 300,000 voters, and Republicans lag with just 200,000 additional voters in the same time period. What does this mean for 2016? Candidates will have to start listening to the nation's increasingly independent-minded electorate if they want to distinguish themselves. The only issue is, do they know how? And I want to say I think Rand Paul is one that has kind of played that card more. Definitely when he gets into things that are kind of universal across political parties, things like the war on drugs, taxes, and I think people relate to that across the spectrum. But will he have enough? I don't know. And then you have people like Trump. Well, he's just a household name, therefore he automatically has that in his favor. On the Democrat side, you have people like Clinton, but people don't trust her. And then you have the hard left going hardcore for Bernie Sanders, basically saying they want socialism. I posted some of my articles to the Facebook page, facebook.com/Anti-Tyranny News. Again, I gave you the sites, Truth and Media, InfoWars, and Counter Current News, and the other ones. But check out those articles, share them. We really need to start waking people up and, again, start preparing for things, because I think that we're looking at a world of hurt coming up, and I think it's really time to prepare. Again, check out the UCY store, Amagi Metals, antityrannynews.com/metal, ucy.tv, click the UCY store tab. That helps support this network, this show, and all the other shows on this network. And we need the truth spread. Stay tuned here on ucy.tv.